This is the Yanks Go Yard podcast with Adam Weinrib and Thomas Carannante.
Welcome to the Yankees Go Yard podcast. I'm Adam Weinrib alongside Thomas Carannante. Juan Soto still available to the highest bidder, probably. Do you feel better about getting him today than you did on Monday? We have the Hal Steinbrenner comments at the owners' meetings. Those are weird. Maybe they made you really optimistic. They made some people really optimistic. To those people, I say, what? But, I mean, there's something there. You can read it optimistically. But then there's also the details of what actually happened. On Monday, we were like, well, at least we're going to be positively associated with Soto. Someone's going to say the meeting went really well. We can all move on. And then we kind of weren't. There was no news on Monday night. And then Tuesday, when the details started to come out, you're like, well, that sounds kind of intense. Bob Clappish, both very helpful and very unhelpful, moving the conversation forward. I don't know if we're any closer to knowing what we want to know now than when we did the show on Monday. But at the very least, we have some details from the meeting to discuss. We know that they had an honest conversation. We'll talk about what that means. We will dissect Hal at the meetings. We'll also talk about everyone and their mother saying that the Mets are the current favorites. Although when you really break it down, everybody's like, I would put the Mets as the favorites. I think the Mets are the most likely outcome. And then when they're asked why, they're like, well, you know, lot of money. I know the guy with the money is there. And it's like, okay, well, I know that too. So what's happening? Either way, we will talk about it further. And joining me, as always, is Thomas Carannante. Thomas, welcome to the show.
What a time it is. Folks, believe nothing. We're going to write about everything. We're going to talk about everything under the sun, but you can't be living and dying by every report and rumor. I know we might be doing that sometimes, but you've seen Juan Soto keep this close to his vest all year. He's been asked about free agency since the day he arrived in New York, which is we're coming up on a year of that. That was like the beginning of December of last year. Exciting times.
Winter meetings, because remember, everybody flew home.
Yeah,
everyone was like, shit. Like Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman have gotten on a plane. It was like, what happened? What snag? And then it turned out no snag. Juan Soto.
Yeah. So exciting times to remember that anniversary. Also, just got to tread lightly. I don't believe anything. I'll tell you that right now.
You can't.
Of course, the Yankees are in the mix. Of course, they don't have a clear indication of what his decision is going to be after one meeting. Of course, every other meeting is going, like you said, positive. Oh, the meeting went well. That's great. What'd they do? They gave an outline of their team and organizational roadmap and then told Juan Soto, hey, we'll be in the mix for whatever this numbered contract is, whether we're right near it or a little bit below it. But everybody who's in on Juan Soto knows that the price is probably $550 or more. So there's a limited pool here. There is one concern that I have. We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the Yankees meeting details with Juan Soto, how much am I buying into this? Like, I don't think he's giving anybody a tell at this point. Scott Boras definitely isn't. I mean, how many off seasons do we go into with Scott Boras having all these clients and us having no idea where they're going to go? Outside of, a couple of guys that are going to take the most money for whatever destination it might be, there are still curveballs. There are teams willing to spend a little bit more. There are teams willing to get a little bit more creative with the deals. But in terms of what's coming out of Yankees insiders' mouths or whatever whatever nonsensical quote. I mean, I don't think they've been nonsensical, but like whatever Hal Steinbrenner is saying, it's like, it doesn't matter. He's being asked a question. He's not going to say, oh, no, yeah, Juan Soto's the favorite to come to the Yankees. We got out of that meeting. We couldn't have felt better. The Mets suck. We know they're not going to punch up to us. We know the Dodgers can't afford it. We know the Blue Jays are 3 rungs below us. So he's going to say what he's going to say.
What I don't understand are the people who want him to say, like, we're not going to get outbid by Soto. He's not going to outbid us. Because he's saying that without saying that. He's saying we're gonna compete for Soto. Which, if you're negative, like we're going to be in the mix or whatever. If you're negative, you can be like, oh my God, he knows he's cooked. But if you're realistic, has Steve Cohen come out and said that he's not going to be outbid yet? No, nobody does that. It's negotiations. Could Steve Cohen put a number fourth that won't be matched? Yes. Could Steve Cohen keep coming back and topping whatever the previous number is? Absolutely possible. But he's given no indication. All you're going off of is his net worth and Michael Kay saying, "Oh, I heard he's going to outbid the top number by 50 million." Michael Kay said that. What is that? It's not Steve Cohen. And then you've got a bunch of Met fans being like, "Oh, if Steve Cohen gave the press conference I saw Hal Steinbrenner give yesterday where he said, he feels like he could pay anyone and they're in a good place, then like, well, I'd be shitting my pants." Like, really? Would you be? Like, what do you think a press conference by an owner is like?
Yeah.
Steve Cohen would get out there and say something like, and he probably will in the coming days, he's a tremendous player and we put our best foot forward and now we put the ball in his court and we see what he thinks or whatever. That's all he's going to say. He's not going to say, "I dropped $850 million on it and I dare anyone to match it. Would you like to eat chicken wings dipped in caviar?" Like, no, he's not going to you're not getting details from Steve Cohen.
Not only that, let's not forget that despite that these owners are billionaires, they still want to save every last penny. They don't want to have to bid the extra $50 million to get Juan Soto. They don't want to have to bid an extra $15 million to get Juan Soto. They want to get Juan Soto at whatever the price the market dictates. So if they find out that the highest offer is $550 million, they're not going much higher than that. If push comes to shove, Steve Cohen will go, "All right, how's 560, 570 sound? Can we wrap it up there?" It's a negotiation. Everyone's trying to read the other without giving explicit information. We go through this every year. We get lost in the rumors and the buzz and the informational tidbits, and I understand why. But in terms of what went down with the Yankees, like, of course you knew they weren't going to give you any information. Of course, various media members were going to be buzzing with anything that they could run with to either get fans excited or get fans worried, because that's the game. We're playing it too. We're jumping in and we're analyzing everything that was said or everything that was reported up until this point. But in terms of leveling, it is what it is. The market's going to determine itself. The Yankees apparently have a plan B, if we're going to believe that, which is spreading out the Juan Soto expenditure. Because look, let's be real honest, and we have touched on this before. There is a price point where you say, no, it doesn't make sense. As much as I love Juan Soto and want him on this team forever, to me, he's not worth anywhere close to Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani is a runaway MVP candidate every year. Juan Soto is not. Shohei Ohtani is an international star and one of the greatest talents to ever come to Major League Baseball. Juan Soto doesn't have that type of pedigree. It just is what it is. You saw the financials on Shohei Ohtani's return on his contract. The Dodgers reportedly made $120 million on Ohtani this past year, and in theory, we're paying him $70 million if you take out the deferrals. He signed a 10-year, $700 million contract, and in year one, they already paid for a large percentage of it with the return that they got on the investment. Juan Soto was not bringing back that investment. Baseball is a business, first and foremost. That's the thing that everybody needs to understand. So while, yes, some of these billionaires have endless pockets where you can just keep throwing money at things, for expenditures like this, there's a line. And if you're not someone like Shohei Ohtani, and even someone like Aaron Judge, who I feel is like a little bit more marketable than Juan Soto, I'm not going to lie to you. It's just kind of is what it is. There's a line for how much you're going to pay and how much you're going to potentially hamstring your team. And the Yankees particularly are not in the greatest of situations because you have Judge, Stanton, Rodon, Cole, LeMahieu still under contract for at least 2 or 3 more years.
Aaron Hicks under contract for 1 more year.
Still paying Aaron Hicks. There's somebody else in there. Stroman. So yeah, we could revisit this and say the Yankees should have spent better, so they could have went all out on Juan Soto and had nothing to worry about. But they also had no idea Juan Soto would fall into their laps after the Padres completely fell apart in 2023. So it's all revisionist history at this point. Bottom line, there will be a benchmark for what the Yankees and really any other team is willing. Even Steve Cohen will have a limitation on what he can spend. Remember what we've talked about here. The Mets have 10 free agents. 10. All of those players were integral to their NLCS run. The team that's coming back in 2025 is not the same team. And the players who have graduated to free agency for the Mets are now among, the people are talking about Luis Severino and Sean Manaea getting 20 to 25 million a year. You can't just find that now as easily as you might have been able to last year. Like, I'm not going to doubt David Stearns because I think he's a really good GM, but this isn't linear. You're not just going to, we'll replace two of our best starters with ease for a quarter of the price or half the price, which is essentially what they did last year. It's not going to work like that every time. So now the Mets have a lot of expenditures that they need to make beyond Juan Soto. And they're in a different spot than the Yankees, who probably don't need to make that many more expenditures. They just need to move things around, but they also have to deal with the money that they have on the books, that some of it's a little bit regrettable, if we're being honest.
It's extremely regrettable, and it's the way that they have to move forward. Look, that's why we're pitching the Red Sox as a real alternative, because player development, like, yeah, they got that. Young core, yeah, they got that. They need to spend. They don't have a bottomless well of money, and they shouldn't. And Juan Soto is kind of a weird use of their money, considering how many of their prospects are in the outfield. But very few commitments, and you could make the argument that John Henry waited so long to spend so that he could drop $650 million on Juan Soto, and I would hear that argument out. I still would call the Mets the favorites. That the one thing that's bothering me when we get all these reports out is people, and this was so predictable, but people being like, oh my God, the downfall of the Yankees since they made the World Series a month ago has been tremendous. You're going to have to fill me in on what downfall, because first of all, they made the World Series. Again, you're sweeping that under the rug. Oh, the downfall since they made the World Series. American League champions, best team in the American League, made the World Series. So unless you're the Los Angeles Dodgers, you didn't make it as far as the Yankees did. So your team must have had a worse downfall. But what downfall? All year, it's a flawed Yankees team, right? We know this. Defensive deficiencies, odd fits, base running, etc. Being carried to the finish line by Juan Soto, and ultimately being carried to the finish line of the American League. They didn't make it all the way to the end. They didn't win the World Series, but they were the best team in their league, in large part because they added Juan Soto, which is another reason why when people are like, ooh, spread the money around. Yeah, I get it. But also, look at what Juan Soto just did to this deficient roster. Like, he quite literally was more impactful than any other possible addition last year. Like, if you put Blake Snell and Christian Walker on last year's Yankees, do they go as far as the version that we just saw with Juan Soto? I don't think that they do. But hey, we'll see. Either way, defending American League champs who got their flaws exposed in the World Series. And yes, they lost in 5. And yes, they almost got swept. And yes, the 5th inning of Game 5 was the worst single inning in franchise history. And we're so lucky it was a Game 5, because it was a Game 7 or a Game 6 with a chance to close it out. We'd be losing our minds. We wouldn't be watching baseball. We'd still be talking about it. But what's changed since then? Nothing has happened. No free agents have changed hands. Steve Cohen and the Mets were the favorites to sign Soto all year, probably, right? I mean, by what percentage, I'm not sure, but I would have set the Mets as 55% odds favorites to sign Juan Soto all year. And what would I set them at now? 55, 60, 65? Like, that when people say downfall, when people say downfall of the Yankees, they're talking about one inning which occurred in the World Series, which is where you want to be, and then the team that was already in the best position to Soto still being in the best position to sign Soto.
Yeah, and I don't even know if I go higher than 60%. I know where your head's at, because it's getting more real that Juan Soto might leave, right? Yeah. Every day that goes by where he's not with the Yankees in free agency is a day where it feels like, okay, this is actually becoming more and more of what our fears in our head have kind of lived up to. There are reasons they should be the favorites, though. One, they're the New York Yankees, and I know that we do say that it doesn't have the allure as it once did, and I think that is the case for general free agents, right? Like, a mid-tier free agent is like, man, I want to go play for the Yankees. That would be great. A mid-tier free agent probably just wants to make their money and not have to deal with endless media criticism or constant spotlight. And that could change from personality to personality, obviously. When we say this is the New York Yankees, we're talking about that through the lens of a player of Juan Soto's caliber who wants to go above and beyond for legacy, who wants to be part of that legend that very few players have been a part of. Or he wants to ascend that and say, wow, look at the New York Yankees history. What if I am mentioned atop these names? I will never be forgotten. I will be etched in history for the rest of time, and I will be quite literally a legend. So I do think there is still that appeal for players of that caliber. For the everyday player, I don't think that's the case. I think guys who like maybe who come over in trades get pumped up because they're like, fuck yeah, let's go. Like, this is my fate and you kind of have to deal with it. But like, if you have your pick of the litter in free agency and you're someone like, for example, Sean Manaea, who's going to have a bit of an expanded market after a good contract year, and you're looking to cash out, maybe the Yankees or the Mets aren't your first choice because you look at the tax implications, you look at the media, you look at the expectations in general, and it's not entirely that appealing. For someone like Juan Soto or Shohei Ohtani, for example, who are going to be making, $600 million, the taxes don't matter. All at that point, you're richer than most people in the world. And then at that point, it's providing for your family and building your baseball legacy. So that's one reason that there should be an advantage here. Outside of that, Juan Soto already saw what this team's ceiling is. If they clean it up on defense and situational hitting a little bit, that team probably wins the World Series. And I'm, again, not taking anything away from the Dodgers. They were the better team, but they were the better team because the Yankees were the less tight team and the less disciplined team. Yeah. The Yankees clean that up. They're arguably more talented. They arguably win that series maybe in 6 because 2 of those games should have been in their favor had they not shot themselves in the foot. Dodgers capitalized. Rest is history. We're just talking hypotheticals now. Pairing with Aaron Judge, I think if you have a 1-2 punch like that in MLB, it's arguably more valuable than ever. Look at Mike Trout. I love Mike Trout. He's in Anaheim. He signed on there to be the face of the franchise and the guy. He's absolutely gotten nowhere. And that's what happens when that's kind of the focus, when you can't build a team around that. They got lucky with signing Shohei Ohtani. It obviously didn't work because the rest of the roster building was poor and couldn't hold up the top heavy end of it. So I think Juan Soto saw the value and like, damn, I'm paired with a star. We're in this together. The media is tough, but guess what? We're battling together. We're talking to the reporters after these games. We're through this, the good and the bad. And then finally is just the overall contention aspect of it. Like, you look at the Mets. Sure, the Mets might be the favorite in terms of money, but in terms of franchise success, the Mets don't really have it. And for someone like Juan Soto, he should be looking at that, and that should be weighing into the decision. Same goes with anybody else. Like, yeah, in theory, if Juan Soto wanted to go to the Dodgers, he would sit there and say, you know what? This team's in the playoffs every year. If they weren't in a situation where it was like, we don't know if we could pay Juan Soto, but now they aren't, and it's going to be tough. They're going to have to move a lot of things around. But if the Dodgers were, in theory, able to make another $600 million contract work, that would be a very appealing destination for him. Someone who wants to win, someone who wants his baseball resume to be completely ironclad when the Hall of Fame discussion comes up. So I still think that the Yankees have distinct advantages that other teams don't, and it's going to come down to the messages in these meetings, in my opinion, which could be a little bit worrisome because we know that I don't know if Hal Steinbrenner and Brian Cashman are the best at laying out plans and making players feel welcome and valued and secure in their questions. Like, I don't know if you have any other factors here in terms of why the Yankees should be the favorite, but I don't know what Juan Soto's thinking because he's played it very shrewdly throughout this entire time. He's given us no clues. So that's really where I'm basing my analysis on. I'm like, if I'm Juan Soto and I want to be remembered as one of the greatest baseball players of all time, what's my decision going to be? I'm not saying the Yankees are number one, but I'm saying I think they should be ahead of the Mets, the Blue Jays, the Phillies, right?
I mean, the camaraderie aspect is the part that gets overlooked here for me. Because,
I agree.
Look, I can't guarantee it. I was not in the locker room, but I do know that the shot of Juan Soto turning to the dugout and cheering and chanting and getting everyone out of the dugout as he hit the 3-run home run to send them to the World Series, like, that's real. That happened. That's emotion. And so every other team in this chase, it's not just these franchises like, oh, a Yankee can't go play for the Red Sox. Oh, a Yankee can't go to the Mets. He was in the Yankees locker room last year. So if you go to the Red Sox the next season for a high dollar value that Hal Steinbrenner can match, right? We know he can. We don't know if he will, but we know he makes enough profit to do so, right? So if Juan Soto ends up on the Mets because the Mets outbid the Yankees by $150 million, and you get to that point where it's ridiculous, like we said, and you have to go, all right. I mean, which is essentially the crux of the Bob Clappish piece today, being like, would George Steinbrenner have just gone crazy for Juan Soto? No, George Steinbrenner would not have gotten into a pissing contest with Steve Cohen and gone to $900 million for a $600 million player. So if he goes to the Mets for a contract that absurd, then I do think he obviously gets booed when he comes back to New York,
Yes.
right? When he comes and plays in the Subway Series. But I think it's basically booing out of compunction. Like, you're going to boo him, but you also understand why he's gone, and you're mad he's gone, and the Yankees probably aren't as good as they were last year, and so we're booing, and we're going to boo the next couple of years too. But if he goes to the Red Sox, I mean, that's a outright betrayal of the guys in that locker room who I believe he does have a close relationship with. And I'd like to know where Aaron Judge is on this. He wasn't in the meeting. You know, it seems like meetings were get to know you, ownership level stuff, but I need Aaron Judge on this because look, if they weren't close and they didn't like playing together, then they fooled me, and that's great.
Yeah.
But baseball's a business, sure, but man, that is like, if you go to the Mets for that huge contract, you got to smile and nod through your boos. If you go to the Red Sox for a matchable contract, like, you're being
That's fucked
asshole.
up.
You're being an asshole. Like, that's a real dick move. So, and there are real people here. It's not just binary, like, oh, Yankees and then the Red Sox. Those are two things. They hate each other. It's Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole, and you just watched them go to war with Alex Cora 2 months ago, and then you're like, that's what I want. Like, that would be viewed, I think, even more negatively than a Mets move, a hop for this huge astronomical raise. I still feel like if the Yankees get in range, he returns, just because we mentioned it on the last show, and in range, I mean, I'm really talking about razor thin. I'm not talking about the Yankees getting outbid by $50 million and banking on the power of friendship. I'm talking about the Yankees bidding 701 and the Mets bidding 715, or the Mets stretching it out for another year and the Yankees compressing it or whatever.
I even think 50 million is not enough. Like, if it's 700, like, just say if it's 700 for the Mets and 650 for the Yankees, like, you're taking the extra 50 million.
I think he
really,
is. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
At that point, 50 million's it's a drop in the bucket. That's my opinion.
Hopefully. I mean, that's what everybody says. And we'll talk about parsing what Hal said yesterday. And you've got a comment already saying, like, the officials aren't confident. I think when I talked to John Sterling last week and Dave Sims on Foul Territory, they keep doing that, sort of loser talk thing of like, look, $500 million at a place I love versus $600 million at a place I don't know. I'm taking that $500 and I'm buying my wife a steak. Like, I get it, but that to me is more loser talk than what Hal Steinbrenner did yesterday, which was basically the takeaway. I don't leave that Hal Steinbrenner press conference being like, oh, we got him. He's a lock. But him saying, I've got my ears open. I know what everyone is saying, and I understand this is my responsibility. That was the most telling quote to me, more so than him saying, we'll be in the mix, and ooh, sheesh, I don't know. Or, do we do enough? Ooh, buddy. I mean, money wasn't discussed as far as I know. He knows they're going to have to go high. But him essentially saying it's on me and I know what I have to do was that's crucial in the pursuit, because if you didn't believe him when he said he was going to compete with Cohen, then you should after that, because he's essentially saying, I'm either going to get him and I'm going to go far enough I'm either going to get him or I'm going to go far enough to get him and not get him, not to be too complex, but he understands it falls on him. He understands at the end of the day, he can't survive getting to the end of this process and it leaking out that the Mets offered 14 years and $725 and he offered 12 years and $510 and like beat Aaron Judge's average annual value, but couldn't get past 9 years or whatever. Then his life is going to be hell.
Yeah.
But he's going to be respected, not more so than he currently is, but to the same extent, if the Mets go 14 for 750 and he goes 13 for 700, and then Juan Soto just picks the slightly large, like, I don't know, he can't really fully be blamed. And people will blame him. The same people who blamed him for losing Yamamoto last year. despite Shohei Ohtani being on the Dodgers and Yamamoto very clearly playing the Mets and Yankees off each other so that he can go to the Dodgers, and the Yankees topping the Dodgers in terms of AAV. But, the same people who blamed him for that will blame him for this. And they'll say, okay, I hear you, but you offer less money, so got no sympathy. I get it, but there is a certain point. He even said yesterday with Yamamoto, there was a walkaway number. Here with Soto, we haven't come to that determination. We don't know what a walkaway number is. That's the one area where I'm not sure I believe him, but it's what he's saying. And he's admitting that last year there was, in fact, a walkaway number.
And there had to be with a different free agent like that. And we've discussed that too. It's like the guy never pitched here, and we know that he's really good, but you also are grappling with, we have literally the best pitcher in baseball per the Cy Young Award. Garrett Cole won the Cy Young last year.
Yeah, a couple more
pay him.
Yeah. Actually, no, he already is not the Cy Young, but yes.
Last year, he won the Cy Young before these negotiations started. And it's like, we're going to pay this guy all this. We're going to pay him more than the reigning Cy Young winner, who we signed on to the largest starting pitching contract of all time. Like, no. And I think there was a consensus agreement there. Yes, there is the argument to be had where it's like, dude, you're the Yankees, just like shut up and dole it out. But that was you could at least reason with that and understand that. For Juan Soto, again, there should be if Steve Cohen's coming in and he's putting down a blank check and the number is absolutely ridiculous, then you have to figure out a contingency plan. But if it's in the neighborhood, you got to be there. You got to be in the mix. Why are they disadvantaged? Why might they be falling out of favor? So I know you have a lot to say on this. The only reason I'll start, because I only have one thing here, and the details of the meeting came out yesterday, and Juan Soto was asking the Yankees about their player development.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's asking about the player development, something that 16-year-olds are asking about as they parse through stats and look through farm system rankings, then what does he actually think of the future longevity of this organization? Is this going to be, we're going to contend for a World Series for the next 2-3 years and then kind of be in shit because there are no promising prospects down the pipeline, or whatever prospects you deem promising are falling off a cliff for whatever reason? There's recent history to suggest all of that. You have Davy Garcia for one. We watched that fall apart, and then he withered into nothing in terms of trade value. We just witnessed it with Oswald Peraza. Jason Dominguez seems to be on that track based on how they treated him this year. We pray to God that's not the case, but could be. Mm-hmm. The evidence is overwhelming in to the contrary. And then you have Spencer Jones, who was hyped up as one of the best prospects in baseball, had not that great of a season, did rebound in the second half, though. I think he probably got dinged a little bit too hard for his poor first half performance, but he's no longer a top 100 prospect in the game. And you go through Will Warren, a top 5 prospect, couldn't have been worse. Couldn't have been a worse pitcher. And look, he's young. He's got to work through some stuff. No one's given up on Will Warren, but if you're talking about early returns from these guys who are deemed the tops in the farm system, Yankees are not good. They're really not good. And if Juan Soto's noticing that, and that's a question he's asking in these developments, we saw it come out of the Red Sox meeting, right? The Red Sox laid out what their future plan is. They went extensive in detail about their prospect promotions, because remember, they have a lot of guys who are right on the cusp of major league debuts. They have a lot of guys who are super talented, but also might represent a bit of a redundancy at a position. So that gives the Red Sox a little bit more power on the trade market to acquire more talent. Yankees don't have that luxury. The Yankees, one, don't have that many good prospects and don't really have an arsenal to trade from. So yes, if you look at how the Red Sox meeting potentially may have went in terms of looking down the barrel of the next 10 to 15 years and the Yankees franchise outlook for the next 10 to 15 years, I think the Yankees have the advantage for tops the next 3 to 5. And the Red Sox certainly have the advantage well beyond 5 and into the 10, 15-year range without question.
Yeah, I think the Red Sox are today, without Juan Soto on the New York Yankees, a better team than the New York Yankees. There you go. I mean, they had precious little pitching last year. They made chicken soup out of whatever they had to begin with. and they finished 500. And I think they would start this year with more momentum. I know they lost Tyler O'Neill. Big whoop. The player development thing is a flag for me, although I think you could take this both ways too. In terms of, I would rather Juan Soto have a frank and honest conversation, or whatever Hal Steinbrenner called it, an honest conversation. I would rather him get down in the nitty gritty with the Yankees rather than just have a very impressive presentation. He loved that PowerPoint the Red Sox did about how they had Dominican players a couple decades ago. Or he loved that PowerPoint Steve Cohen did about how he has a statue that looks like a stick figure. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, very cool. So I'm glad that the meeting touched on some real flashpoints, it would seem. And that can be read as someone who wants to return, making certain that his feedback is internalized. We weren't there, so all we know is what we heard, and that he had an honest conversation about many aspects of the Yankees development program and whatnot. That's all we know. So it's unlikely that he would just be like, I'm out. I'm not coming back. Before I leave, what the hell happened to Spencer Jones? Where was Jason Dominguez this year? What are you guys doing at the lower levels in rookie ball and in Latin America? Fix it, because this is busted. Anyway, I'm out. Have a good one. It does seem very unlikely that is the case. And it spurred, according to the Bob Clappish article, a conversation about where Steinbrenner promised him further upgrades. You have roster spots to fill this year, so you have to upgrade. I feel like you're able to do more next year, but either way, we'll see. Of course, there is also the negative reading of Juan Soto drilling down in the Yankees player development and Steinbrenner coming up with what sounded like an excuse when asked about it. He said something like, oh, I'm sure he's asking that to every team. You know, I'm sure he's never even been to the player development complexes, and he's curious. He wants to know what we got going on down there. I don't think that's why he was thinking about the player development. I don't think his frank and honest conversation about the player development with the Yankees consisted of, I've never been to your Florida training facility. Do you guys have big picture windows? Like, is there enough room to sort of do elbow stretches in the main gym? Like,
can I get a trip expense there? Is that possible?
Yeah, I haven't been. Would it be okay if I went down there for a couple of days? I kind of just want to use that level and see if there are any studs in the wall that I can really. I kind of want to put up a TV right here. You guys have a Rapsodo? Like, I don't think that's what he was doing. So, negative view is that Hal Steinbrenner's explanation for that question and that line of questioning was kind of insane. But positive view is, I don't know if you would dive deep and really diagnose that if you plan to just leave them on red from that point forward. Like, I have some stuff to say about the player development. I have questions. Aaron Judge has some questions. He uses his private hitting coach. Why does he do that? We all kind of want to have input on this team. It would be surprising if Juan Soto wanted to have input and then was like, and best of luck with all that, because you got a lot. You also have to find a right fielder because I'm out. Like, that would surprise me. And in the plan Bs, by the way, no Anthony Santander, please. You're looking for a right fielder, you have one. It's Aaron Judge. He goes back to right. Anything. It would also be funny if Juan Soto was like, yeah, you've got this like defensive issue in the outfield. Like, Aaron Judge, man, I don't know if he's built for center field. He's a much better right fielder. And you got this guy in right field who's a Gold Glove finalist. But like, how did that happen? Like, did anybody watch him? And Hal's like, that was you, Juan. You're the problem in that aspect. And he's like, gotta go. And he's already out the door. He's like, yep, fix it. I'm bad at that.
Yeah, look, maybe he values change of scenery. Maybe he's looking at the fact that he's going to be with the next organization for a decade plus. What do you think this deal is? 12 at least? 12 to 15?
13, 14, yeah.
Yeah, 13, 14. So, look, assuming there's no trades baked into there, that you're staring down the barrel of being with one organization for essentially the rest of your career. So these questions are pertinent, and there is reason for him to ask it to the Yankees, because he was only here for 1 year, and maybe he's sitting there and he's like, all right, I didn't get the scope of everything. I've only been like, he was with the Padres for 1.5 years, 2 years. He was with the Nationals for however long. Like, you get a better idea of what things are looking like even beyond that. So it's reasonable for him to ask the questions. I'm worried about the Yankees' answers because, if he's asking about the player development, oh, we have the best player development there is. And Brian Cashman, I think we're pretty fucking good at player development, Juan. Next question. And it doesn't lend to an open or, willing conversation, which I know that someone like Juan Soto would value. Change of scenery, I don't know if that's totally up his alley. The only thing that I can think of is going to a better team with a better win now plus future outlook. I don't know if he has a better chance to win now on another team outside of the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But and you could argue the Phillies, but the Phillies have kind of shit the bed badly the last 2 years. And I think that the recency bias might reign supreme here. And again, he just did it with the Yankees, just won the AL with the Yankees, just came within a few mistakes of winning a World Series with the Yankees. So the only thing that I can think about them falling out of favor is some of the, larger pillar discussions that fall under the 10 to 15 year plan rather than, hey, I had a great time here last year. Can we make it more fun? I think he already knows that it's a good clubhouse. It's a relatively good culture, even though we might push back on that a little bit because sometimes there's stuff that goes on where it's like, really, how is this happening still? But yeah, or again, if the Yankees are not going to be competitive with their offer, or if they have a number in mind and they're not going beyond it, and they're not going to be flexible if they're blindsided with something unexpected. And again, I don't know what the number is. I don't know if this market is starting at 500. I don't know if it's starting at 600. I don't know if it's ending at 650. I don't know if it's ending at 525. Like, I really don't know. Ohtani's contract can't really be viewed as a benchmark because he is maybe a once-in-a-lifetime example, two-way player, international superstar, literally larger than life in every way. And again, perennial MVP candidate. He's going to win the MVP tonight, and he did not pitch last year. He was a DH last year. So I think we throw that out the window, and I don't know how Scott Boras is going to argue that maybe these cases are comparable. The only thing that Juan Soto has above Shohei Ohtani is that he might be he either is or is one of the youngest free agents of all time. And that's a huge benefit for teams looking to avoid regression in the later years of this contract. So those are the only two things where I see the Yankees potentially shooting themselves in the foot or being unable to deliver, one being the player development thing, because Juan Soto is asking that question for a reason. The Yankees have had player development problems for 20 years now. It's nothing new. So yeah, again, I'm not feeling better or worse than I did yesterday or 2 weeks ago. I'm not reading into any of these reports as gospel in any way. I think this is going to go down to the wire. I think the Yankees need to figure out what a respectable offer is and make sure they're within $50 million of the next highest one. And I think they need to do the best that they could possibly do in making Juan Soto feel better about potential fears that he might have with the organization in terms of the next 10 to 15 years. So yeah, I'm not like, what did Bob Clappish say? You wrote about that this morning. He was talking about, he gave the first positive update, and now he's saying that that's probably not the case. I don't know.
Yeah, he was the one who, I mean, we got nothing except for John Heyman had like an early morning tweet that was like, forgot to say the meeting went very well. It went very well. And I was like, okay, great. But when the Red Sox had their meeting, oh, very impressive, 3 hours. When the Mets had their meeting, oh, very thorough, very detailed. When the Yankees had their meeting, it was like, the Dodgers have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. It was like, okay, thank you. Like, the Scott Boras info machine had already moved on to the next, so we couldn't even figure out an association. Then Clappish got all that info on the player development conversation and the honest conversation, and Hal Steinbrenner saying, I'll go above and beyond, I'll get you upgrades, and it was also the first article to mention that Randy Levine was there, which was kind of funny because it made it pretty clear that Randy Levine was the source, because we knew it was like a meeting with Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner and Scott Boras and Juan Soto, but we know nothing about it. And then all of a sudden it was like, there was this meeting with Hal Steinbrenner, Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone, Juan Soto, Scott Boras, and also Randy Levine. And here's a ton of information about it. It's like, okay, well, it seems like Randy may be confessing things from inside the inner sanctum, but see, he was the only one to give us, and he also had some Yankee execs feeling hopeful after that meeting or something. And so then he wrote an article overnight or published this morning that did include some other executives and voices with the team that believe that they should be the favorites after the meeting. So great. I mean, that's good. But then the rest of the article went on to say basically what we said earlier about the number, if it gets absurd. Is Hal Steinbrenner going to go to an absurd number? He thought that he would not, and that it was time for him to start thinking of a plan B and what that looks like. It's going to look like something. We'll talk about it and, the options that have been presented so far. And he also said that the quotes from the owners' meetings started to sound like he was a little bit resigned about losing him to the Mets. I'm not sure I agree. They sounded a little bit like he was resigned to the fact that the Mets are going to be insane.
Yeah.
That the Mets offer is going to be absurd, and he's either going to have to match an absurd offer or be hated by the people who root for his sports team. That's what I took away. It's a Rorschach test. Anyone is able to take away what they want to about it. And Bob Clappish took away that, he thinks he's already a little bit defeated. He's kind of outfoxed here. And I think that hits different just because of the optimism from the other Clappish piece. And also, if you were trying to read it optimistically, and then the next day, the author of that piece is like, I'm pessimistic. Well, then it's like, okay, then why was I wasting time reading that other article optimistically if the person who wrote it was like, I try to get pessimism across, you idiots. It's like reading Catcher in the Rye and being like, I think life is going to turn out all right. And then like, there's an addendum. It's like, that wasn't what's in the book. I did not write that. Like, oh, okay, sorry. So I don't know. That's why it's noteworthy. And so you're thinking about a plan B. With the caveat that I still think, look at what Juan Soto did to an 82-80 team last year over year. Aaron Judge was healthy for all of 2024, but and that made a huge difference too, obviously. But
Not much else improved though.
Once they got to the playoffs too, Aaron Judge couldn't do anything, and they needed to rely on Juan Soto to carry them, and carry them he did. You mentioned briefly that you don't feel any more or less confident than you did a couple of weeks ago. I will just add, from my perspective, I feel less confident than I did in the wake of him hitting the ALCS winning home run and gesturing at the dugout and going nuts. At that moment, I was like, come on. Like, I understand Steve Cohen has all this money, but just watch that video again. Like, come on. As long as the Yankees are in range, he's not leaving this team. But look, now that we're in the world where he's seriously entertaining the Boston Red Sox, I'm like, man, I wonder, like, I go back and forth between, I still don't think he leaves. And if he does leave, there's a chance that it's been an open secret all year that like, he's as good as gone. Because if, we heard, hey, it's about the money. And I was like, obviously it's about the money, but some form of loyalty will also be involved in the thought process. Like, not that it would override or counteract, but I was always of the belief that like, yes, it's obviously about the money, but the money will be there. And look at all these teammates and look at your gesturing to them and you're screaming and you're going to the World Series. And then when the meeting schedule is like, he's seriously considering the Red Sox, he's impressed by them, he's impressed by the Mets. It's like, okay, well, one of those teams, I don't even know if they have money. Like, he's seriously impressed by a team that, maybe it's about a lot of things. Like, I don't know. That's where I'm at. I'm still, I think, like around a 50-50 coin flip, honestly. I don't want to even entertain some of the plan Bs just suck. Like the pitching plan B, I like. There are no certainties there. Corbin Burns, K rate regression, going to cost a lot of money. Blake Snell, high variance. Max Fried, probably a Red Sox. Like, I like it. You got to use money, so use it on upgrading the Marcus Stroman and Luis Heel and the Clark Schmidt spots. I would do that. I would sign a first baseman rather than start Ben Rice. If I had money, I would sign Christian Walker. I would even start entertaining Pete Alonso. Wouldn't be my first choice, and would be my second choice behind Christian Walker, because Walker's going to get like $20 million a year, but for like 3 years. I think Pete Alonso is going to be kind of a bargain relative to the level of stardom there and what we maybe thought he was going to get, but he's not going to be that much of a bargain. You're going to have to pay him 5 years. Of 24 million. I mean, it's going to be 5 years, 110 or something. And that's not that much. And the Mariners should do that, but I'd rather have Christian Walker. But beyond that, Anthony Santander, no. Ken Rosenthal, no more imperfect outfield fits. Aaron Judge goes back to right field. Anthony Santander does not go to left field. I'm not paying him to do that. Cody Bellinger, Rosenthal talked about today. The Cubs are looking to trade him and then mentioned only the Yankees as a potential trade fit in the wake of a potential Soto loss. Bellinger can play first. moderately interesting, but also no. I mean, I didn't even want to overpay Bellinger at the trade deadline in 23 when he was having a career year. Then he had a middling, injury-plagued year last year. Nobody on the Cubs wanted him to opt back into that deal. That's why he did it. So not interested in that being my plan B. That's a 500 team if I've ever seen one, especially if they don't improve the pitching meaningfully.
What if that's part of plan A? What if you trade Stroman and a prospect for Bellinger? Because look, the salaries are a wash at that point, right? The Cubs are not sitting there being like, hey, we have Cody Bellinger and you're going to want him. We have Cody Bellinger and we didn't want this salary on the books and we kind of want to get rid of him. So what do you got for us? There could be a salary dump match with this. These teams have linked up for a lot of trades in the past, so maybe they could work something out. But like, if that's part of the plan A, you get Soto, you import Bellinger to play first base, and you give Ben Rice another year of development because he probably needs it. Works with Bellinger throughout the year. That could be it in terms of a plan B. Like, you got to have. I don't even know what the best possible plan B is, because you're looking at all of these options who are aging. So you're in the situation where it's like, okay, Alex Bregman would be cool, but 31 years old and wants a Manny Machado contract per reports. Probably not doing that. Willy Adames, great player, 29 years old though, and just is coming off a career year, but has a lot of the same traits that this lineup has in terms of strikeouts, in terms of boomer bust power. He is a great situational hitter. I will say that his hitting with runners in scoring position and his high leverage numbers are absolutely incredible. So maybe that moves the needle. But then again, you're acquiring somebody to play not their natural position. Down the road, he was probably going to move to third base anyway, but going to accelerate that clock with a top tier investment. I don't know. You look at Pete Alonso, Christian Walker, underwhelming. You don't feel like you're comfortable in safe hands with those moves.
I'm not whelmed. I am not whelmed by those.
You're literally not whelmed at all. You're just like, well, what's next?
I'm knocking on the front door of Yankee Stadium. Hello, Yankee Stadium. Could you whelm me, please? And they're like, get out of here. I'm like, not till I'm whelmed. Sorry.
We're not in the business of whelming.
You should be. You should be.
Yeah, truly. Like Ha-Seong Kim would be a great addition, might be out for half the year, so like you can't really hitch your wagon to that.
Classic Yankee. I'll hitch my wagon right to his wrist.
Yeah. Max Kepler, like an elusive Yankees target for however long, just doesn't really do it. Starting pitching, like, yeah, you know what you could do with starting pitching? You could go out and you could get Blake Snell, you could get Nathan Eovaldi, and you could get Kyle Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
Get those three, and then have a fucking mega rotation. Get rid of Stroman. Trade Clark Schmidt, or move him to the bullpen as a multi-inning guy. Revamp the bullpen a little bit, and then you import these underwhelming offensive options to fill the voids at maybe third base, first base, and one outfield spot. Sure. I don't know what that does. I don't know how that would make me feel if it happened, but there's a lot of imperfect solutions here. There's no clear-cut plan B. And again, what are we worried about the most? The Yankees spreading around the money and being smart with it, because they don't do that well. I wish they did. I'd feel a lot more comfortable.
They bring in Josh Donaldson's with their money. That's I want you just want to hold everybody's feet to the fire. Who right now, I understand that there's a limit to how much you want to pay one man in Juan Soto. I understand you don't want to hamstring yourself. I understand it's an imperfect defensive fit. But everybody who doesn't want to pay Juan Soto and would rather spread the money around are the same people who've been saying fire Brian Cashman for 5 years. He's an idiot. He's a moron. All he does is ruin the roster. I want to empower him to rebuild the roster. Instead of making the easy decision in Juan Soto, you're like, I trust in Cashman. I want him unfired. He has to pick the right 5 free agents to use Juan Soto's money on to get us back to the World Series and get us winning it again. That's the only thing I can't stomach. Like, you're asking for more difficult Brian Cashman legwork. If you're like, don't sign Soto, sign 6 guys. Okay, great. Then now the onus falls on a front office that you've long not trusted to do that.
Yeah. So That's where it's tough. And again, we could look to the trade market, right? But we just talked about how the Yankees don't have much to trade. If you wanted to trade Spencer Jones or Jason Dominguez, you kind of can't now. You had your chance to trade Spencer Jones for Corbin Burns, and then Spencer Jones rewarded you with a really bad first half. You had a chance to build up Jason Dominguez's value despite the couple of injury hurdles he had to face in 2024, and you further crapped on his value. So now, and you elevated Will Warren, and you kind of used him in a way that was not conducive to his development, and you further cratered his market. So who are you even looking at to deal at this point? The other Yankees, Chase Hampton, dealt with a nebulous injury all year and was never able to really come back to full force. And the rest of the Yankees farm system is a bunch of guys who are big names and hope to develop someday, but usually don't. George Lombard, Roderick Arias. There's one other guy in there. You probably know better than I do, but either way, it's not appealing to a team who needs to capitalize top of market for an asset that they currently have and they're trying to get off of. So this is where the Yankees' disadvantages lie, and this is where it could get a little bit dicey, but the whole goal is to not have to fall back onto Plan Bill. Plan Bill.
Bill. B stands for Bill. The bill is due. Yeah, Jordan Montgomery, like taking the most aggrieved players on other teams who are coming off 5 ERAs. Like, look, you can make the argument. If the Diamondbacks want Marcus Stroman, then I'll make the move for Jordan Montgomery. But they have a lot of things to sort out if Juan Soto does not come back. And it's going to be creative. I'm interested to see what happens. But I'd rather just see Juan Soto coming back, and I'd rather know the various bids, and I would rather know that we won them, and that would be the most exciting outcome to me personally. And I think 85% of people. I'm not going on a soapbox and saying if they do not bring Juan Soto back, I will never watch again. No, I will be curious to see how they recover from that. And I won't necessarily be optimistic about 2025. I think there's a path, and I hope they take it. Kyle Tucker is a part of that path. Players who are not free agents this year are a part of that path. If they don't sign Juan Soto, I hope they use some of that money and then hold the rest and do a Red Sox approach and wait until there are names that you have. Vlad Jr. is going to hit free agency, I think. It's an interesting person to have on your roster. There are ways to get it done, but there are not ways, in my opinion, to be as good in 2025 as you could be if you just had Juan Soto. Non-tender deadline is tomorrow. Some Yankees are going to get non-tendered, probably. The offseason is really going, even though it feels like Juan Soto's holding it up. Last year, nothing had happened at this point. Yamamoto happened over like Christmas break on like December 22nd or whatever.
Yeah, that was shitty.
It took a really long time, and the Juan Soto trade happened at the winter meetings, and those are still just about 2 weeks away. A little longer than that. They're like December 9th. They're 2 weeks and 4 days away from starting. We're going to get a lot of action in there, but I don't know how much action we're going to get until then, other than Aaron Judge will be the MVP today. Can't wait to see that. Some players are going to probably lose their jobs tomorrow. That is always sad, but they are players who will hook on with other teams. Trent Grisham, got my eye on the Yankees saving that cost. Jose Trevino, the Yankees add another catcher to the 40-man roster on Tuesday at the deadline. In addition to Jesus Rodriguez now, in addition to JC Escarra, who they added a couple weeks ago, in addition to Carlos Narvaez, in addition to Austin Wells. And eventually that's too many catchers. And Jose Trevino had a wrist issue last year that he couldn't get over, and it affected his throwing. And 3 years, he's been a quality backup. But I would say he was a quality backup in year one. All-star, in fact, quality starter. Year two, good defender, couldn't hit, got hurt, had surgery, came back, no longer a quality backup. So really sad, but he might not be here. Tim Meza almost definitely will not be here, although we said that 35 times last year, and it was never true. John Birdie, one to watch. I would keep him, and I don't think that's a substantial enough cost for the Yankees to non-tender him over $2.5 million, but I've been wrong before. We will find out.
It's going to be higher than that.
Yeah, but not like drastically.
No, it might be 4. He made $3.62 million last year.
Yeah, but it will not be the 7+
No, yeah,
cost Trent Grisham.
So at that point, like Grisham's got to go. I think Nestor is, I want to say worst case scenario, he's a non-tender possibility. Best case scenario, he's a trade candidate.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't know, because he's supposed to get a huge raise. He's supposed to get like $4 or $5 million. He made $4 million last year. The projection's in between 8 and 9 for him this year. So I don't really. Oh, don't forget Scott Efros and Mark Leiter Jr. Those are the big winners for us. Clark Schmidt will get a raise. So yeah, this could get, we could see a mixed bag. I'm not going to say that I don't think there's any guarantees here, because I think, like, for example, the Yankees might be more inclined, possibly would be more inclined to tender Grisham a contract and then trade him, because I think a team might value Trent Grisham. That's just me. But yeah, there's going to be a mixed bag tonight. We have Aaron Judge versus Juan Soto versus Bobby Witt Jr. for the MVP award. Should be overwhelmingly Judge. I think we'll see more first place votes for Witt than Soto as well.
Here's a question, though. Are we going to see Juan Soto and Aaron Judge in the same MLB Network broadcast?
Maybe
like not in the same room, although that would be nice. That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
But a virtual room with Judge and Witt and Soto, 1, 2, 3, it'd be see them.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Give us something to get pumped up about.
Yeah, before we sign off, one final middle finger at the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Oh yeah, middle finger.
They can enjoy their championship all they want, and they obviously are doing that. And congratulations to the Dodgers again, who took advantage of the New York Yankees. But Chris Taylor showed up on Mookie Betts' team-wide full roster post-parade podcast and was asked to talk about the fifth inning of Game 5. Of course he was, someone who played the least role of anybody. Why didn't we ask a peanut vendor? Why didn't we ask GM Andrew Friedman what he was feeling in the dugout? Who knows? But Chris Taylor acting very much emulating another LA athlete in LeBron, saying, look, we knew, us, Adam Weinrib and Thomas Carannante, knew that the Yankees had defensive issues, right?
Yes.
They did from time to time. But Chris Taylor gets on the pod saying our entire dugout predicted that if we put the ball in play, they would, as he said, quote, shit down their legs and make 3 of the worst errors we've ever seen in a row. No, you didn't. Come on. You didn't know that. When Judge made the error, you probably thought you could capitalize on it and that the door was open for you, because we thought that. The pessimists among us thought that. But no, you weren't like, ooh, Judge is dropping balls. All right, Volpe's next. Then Cole's not going to cover first. And then we got this. Then 2 strike hits. Deep into the gap. Teoscar's going 2 strikes. Freddie's going 2 strikes. Also, the Yankees took another lead after that. Right? Yeah. So, and you never scored until Tommy Kahnle came in. The Yankees shut you out for the next couple of innings. So congrats to the Dodgers on winning that game. But let me see your FanDuel real quick, Chris Taylor. Like, are the Chiefs covering this week? Are you on Kalshi? Are you on Poly Market? Like, what do you know? Did you have the Matt Gaetz dropping out of the Attorney General race? Like, what do you have? I'd love to know what you've got ahead of time to get in on that, because, and also Chris Taylor, how many at-bats did Chris Taylor have in the World Series? Like, I'm not usually the biggest, like, why are you talking guy, but also maybe I am the biggest why are you talking guy, because when I got Red Sox chirping about the World Series, Red Sox fans, I'm like, why are you talking? 500 team, couldn't make it, couldn't hack it. Chris Taylor got 1 plate appearance.
Chris Taylor, -0.1 WAR, one of the worst qualified hitters in Major League Baseball this year. I understand he was limited to injury at times, but
limited by his own skill set. Yeah,
definitely limited by injuries, but mostly because he became unplayable. He had a ridiculous strikeout rate. What was it? Yeah, 30 over the last 3 years. Here's his strikeout rate: 35.2, 32.6, 30.9. Home run rate has declined massively, 1.6 this past season. Again, was not a complete non-factor throughout these playoffs. He actually did get some at-bats in the World Series. He went 0 for 5 with a run scored. In the NLCS, he went 3 for 8. In the DS, he went 0 for 4. Okay. So he got a total of 16 plate appearances. Yep. And struck out 5 times. So, cool. Good for you, man. Another World Series.
I don't remember you. Congrats on the ring. Yeah, again, I'm not usually, I want to say I'm not usually the bench players talking like starters guy, but also I think I am, because I'm tired of seeing the rest of Major League Baseball fans talk about the Yankees' downfall like they wouldn't be extremely jealous of a team that had Aaron Judge and Garrett Cohen was in the Juan Soto mix and just came off the World Series.
Yeah.
And I'm also sick of people like Chris Taylor running their mouths saying that you knew a professional baseball team was going to shit down their legs. No, you didn't. No, you didn't know that. I mean, they did, and it really helped you a lot. But Dave Roberts, by the way, on the same podcast, not the same episode, but the same podcast, said he was scared of going back to LA for Game 6. So your manager's scared, but you guys knew that the Yankees were going to fumble the ball and throw it away, and you're going to beat them right then and there in 5. Okay. No, I'm just clarifying. Well,
Cool.
Chris Taylor wants to come on the show. Very cool. We'd love to have a chat. Until then, we'll be back on Monday afternoon, 2 o'clock Eastern. We're getting ready for the winter meetings. We're going to have some great guests for you for the winter meeting shows. But in the meantime, it's probably going to be us. We're going to be breaking down what we hear, what we know, what we think, what we infer. Hopefully, we have some more information for you on Monday. We're getting these dumb little insider reports and trickles, but they're just all about Juan Soto. I would love to hear about somebody else. The Angels are making moves. The Cubs are making moves. The Cubs traded with the Guardians for Eli Morgan. That is the most impactful move of the offseason so far. That's where we're at. So let's get something in the hopper by Monday. We will see you then. I am Adam Weinrib. You can find me on Twitter at Adam Weinrib, Thomas Carannante. Where can the people find you?
At Tommy's_takes. We are both at the official Yanks Go Yard account, at Yanks Go Yard FS. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you all for tuning in today. 55 viewers was our peak. That's pretty fun. Tell your friends. Tell your family. We're a good time. We'll be sure to be having fun throughout the rest of this offseason. Head on over to yanksgoyard.com. That's where all the written content is. Appreciate you guys visiting there as well. We're going to have you up to date on every offseason development, rumor, news, deadline, what have you. And until then, have yourselves a good weekend. We'll be back right here Monday before the Thanksgiving break. It's going to be a big one. Let's go, baby.
I do think it's going to be a big one. We will see you on Monday. Come on, everybody. Thanks for checking out the show. Let's get some movement. We're tired of assessing Bob Clappish's assessment of meetings with Juan Soto.